Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. This is a very, very special episode for two reasons. Firstly, this is an introduction to our Bucky series that we are going to be doing in 2023. We're going to start off with a preamble in 2022, and then we're going to build on it on a weekly basis, each week, each Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time in 2023. That's one reason. The second special reason is that I'm here with my friends Rupali Sharma and Rohit Sharma, and we've been brainstorming this. I've been brainstorming this with CJ and Joe and Maritza and Rupali, and it looks like it's coming together. So, welcome to the Bucky series. This is Bucky Inspired Comprehensivity for understanding and changing the world. That is the theme. Now, what are these things here? Why am I with these things here? So firstly, these are tetrahedrons, which is a very deep idea of in architecture, in 3D design, which Bucky uses fully. So I was inspired by Bucky to use this. And you can see that there are these four different colors. So this is my way of trying to grapple, of understanding comprehensivity. My understanding starts off, I'm using Carl Jung's ideas of cognitive functions, and I'm trying to combine it with many other things in order to plan out this series. So this is an exercise in planning out the series. So what are these four colors? This green is action in the world. This red is valuing or emotions, what you care about. It's your commitment to your values. This blue is your thinking, being able to organize all the data that you have. And this is intuition or vision. Now, when you look at Bucky, he has all these four in spades. Most people have one or two prominent and not the rest. The rest of it is kind of repressed, or they're not in focus. They're weak. Bucky really has a very powerful vision of what universe is, what human beings are, what human life is, and that is intuition. He has very deep intuition about nature. So he's a philosopher. He's a philosopher in his own right. Then, guided by that, he is a thinker. He thinks out everything in explicit terms, guided by these. So this is the second thing that he does. Now, the emotion and passion of, or love of Bucky is apparent to anybody. This is him communicating, communing, creating camaraderie with people through his lectures. Many of the Bucky fans here, Bucky experts, talk about the 4 to 8 hour lectures and discussions that he was in. He would just keep going because he actually cared deeply about communicating his ideas to people. So that is the love between, the camaraderie between people. That's what this is about, the values. And the last one is making it real, designing concrete things based on all of this. So this is what Bucky is about. So what we're trying to do here at 52 Living Ideas, this new series on Bucky is the most ambitious series that we have done. It is not ambitious because of what we are talking about. You know, we have looked at great thinkers like Carl Jung. We have looked at Bhagavad Gita. We have looked at Tao Te Ching. We have looked at Gospel of John. We've looked at books like The Design Way by Harold Nelson. So we have dealt with many. We've looked at Louis Sullivan. We looked at many deep topics. what is different this time is CJ, because CJ is the instigator of this series. This is his vision, and he is deeply into Bucky's thought, Buckminster Fuller's thought. He was one of the founders of the Synergistic collective, and he has been at it for decades. So with CJ's help, we expect a large number of people who are deeply involved in studying and applying Bucky's ideas to actually show up at these meetups and to have conversation with others. So what we're really trying to do is that we're trying to bridge the gap between deep ideas of Bucky and the common culture. That's what we are trying to do. Okay. Now, how do we do that? Now, I'm trying to use the same tool here to talk about the plan that we have. And so I'm going to present the plan in brief, and then I'm going to have a conversation with Rupali and Rohit about it. Okay. So what we're trying to do is, see, Bucky is like this. So Bucky, his guiding principle, I think, is his deep intuition. His second principle is that of thought. His third principle is this desire to bring this to the world, the value that he places on it, and using all of that, he designs. That's how Bucky is. That is Bucky right here. Okay. Now, 52 living ideas. Let's look at 52 living ideas now. 52 living ideas, we too are trying to understand, we are trying to get insights about the world. But for us, the community part is the large part. We really care about communicating to each other about our intuitions as best as we can. And then we have this, and then we have this. So this is roughly the structure of 52 living ideas. So we are trying to present this in this context. Okay? So that's what we are trying to do. Now, many of the people who really know Bucky very, very well, they approach Bucky in a conceptual way primarily. So they have the ideas of Bucky, and they are focused on applying those ideas. And then they have some intuition, and then they have the collaboration part is typically not much. So many of the experts that we are going to see are going to be like this. Okay? So we have to be able to bridge all of these different things together. Now, my friend CJ, the best as I can see it, he is very much of a thinker, but his thinking is guided by really powerful intuitions. And then he is a very methodical guy in trying to apply it, and he is really, cares about collaboration. So he's a whole person, like a very much of a comprehensivist person, but with these kind of emphasis. Okay, so you can see that you can use these in order to look at the range, the emphasis of different people. This does not mean that they cannot do something else, but this is the characteristic way in which they go about doing things. Okay, so we're trying to do things in 52 living ideas on Bucky using the vision of CJ with many experts like this. Okay, so that's what we are trying to do. Now, how do we do that? How do we do that effectively? What we need to do is that we need to do two things. Firstly, we need to raise the interest in Bucky from people in general and 52 Living Ideas and Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society in particular towards Bucky. Okay, so for that, what we need is to build the community, this new community, which is red. So what we've started out with is, see this, these are little tetrahedrons. These are D4 dice for people who are familiar with this. I have a whole bunch of these, but I want to show it to you by color here. So we are going to first focus on building the community. And we started our first meetup with the greatest ideas of Buckminster Fuller, which was Rupali's idea, by the way. So we're starting off with that. And we will continue that next year we're going to do weekly meetups on Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. One of the Sundays will always be this community building of kind of a deep discussion back and forth between people who know Bucky and people who don't know Bucky, who are learning. So that community part we are going to stress. So that's point number one. We are leading out with that. 52 Living Ideas is very strong with that. So we are leading off with that. The second is that we are a big fan. I am a big fan. So is everybody in 52 Living Ideas. It's going back to the sources. Let the person speak for himself. We need to commune with Bucky's ideas. And after consultation with people like CJ, Yasuhiko, and many of the other, and Peter, we have chosen Critical Path, his book Critical Path. So 1 week a month, we are going to be focusing on Critical Path. Again, the format for each of these is going to be, first we're going to have people who know a lot about Bucky talk about the ideas, just brief comments, 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, and then we are going to open it up for comments from everybody else who is learning about Bucky. Then we will take questions. It's going to be highly interactive. So that's the second kind of meetup. So this first one is community discussions. Second one is going to be study of Critical Path. The third one is going to be presentation of Bucky's ideas. So I'm inviting all these people who have been studying Bucky for decades to present individual ideas of Bucky or Bucky inspired ideas that they have to the group. So these also, I want to make sure that anybody can relate to them. So we will always start off with an interview with the person. What they think of Bucky, give an introduction to the presentation they're about to make, and then do the presentation. So that is going to be focused on thinking. You see, this is focused on the camaraderie and the love between people, love of values. This is going to be focused on intuitions, building your intuitions. This is going to be thinking through ideas. And finally, we are going to have presentations by people who are applying Bucky's ideas to physical things, to make things. For example, we're going to have a presentation by Rupali on geodesic dome. And we will apply not just Bucky's work, but any other concrete things made by Bucky. And we will be doing that month after month after month after month. So each month we will have one discussion, one deep dive into Critical Path by Buckminster Fuller, one presentation of ideas, and one show and tell about what does this mean in concrete life. So that is the plan for these Bucky meetups. So now I'm going to have Rupali and Rohit join the conversation, and we'll start. So Rupali, can you tell me a little bit about your interest in Bucky?
So I came across Buckminster Fuller when I was working in India with Mr. Vishnu Joshi, who was part of the ferrocement, I would say ferrocement revival. And he brought geodesic domes into construction. They were economical, they were easy to construct, and when I worked with him, we were able to make these geodesic domes that we could then build for several houses, for factories, for many applications. And that's how I first learned about Buckminster Fuller. And then when I came to New York, when I came to the US, within the first few months, there was a show about Buckminster Fuller's time action car at the Rockefeller Center. And so Rohit and I went there, and we studied Buckminster Fuller a little more at that time.
Wonderful. I'm delighted to have you on board. What do you think about this plan of studying Buckminster Fuller? You're very intimately familiar with 52 Living Ideas. I think Buckminster Fuller's ideas would be adding a lot to the 52 Living Ideas community. I also think that our 52 Living Ideas community is ready to engage with somebody like Bucky with the background of Louis Sullivan and all the spiritual traditions we've been studying, the design way, all of that. So I think the ground is prepared very well. What do you think? What do you feel about this series?
So we are filming this in Massachusetts. Buckminster Fuller was born in Milton, Massachusetts. He studied in Milton Academy, so he's very much of this area. Buckminster Fuller and 52 Living Ideas, they both think comprehensively. So Buckminster Fuller was, during his school days, he did not like the way he was taught, because it was taught in parts, and his mind took things in the whole. And so he rebelled against the traditional way of learning, and he designed an integrated way for himself to think. So, just there itself is 52 Living Ideas, right? So I feel that for the community that you have built, Shrikant, on 52 Living Ideas, Buckminster Fuller just fits in. It's, he considered himself to be part of the universe, that it wasn't just him belonging to himself, but him belonging to the universe, and that he had this larger job to do. So everywhere, whenever he did go to deliver lectures, he would talk about that idea that he had a bigger part and a bigger purpose.
You brought out this point about the focus on communication that Buckminster Fuller had, and I had not realized it. So the vision of CJ is collaborating for comprehensivity. Now, the collaborating is something which is very deeply ingrained in Buckminster Fuller and his ideas and how he does everything. So you look at the number of books that he put out. You look at his lectures and the way it is there described. He actually wants to tell people about it. And that is what is actually needed. It is not enough to just take this and study it on your own and applying it to whatever it is that you're doing. That is obviously extremely good. But you get these network effects when you start talking about it to other people, engaging other people, recruiting other people to work together. Now, what I want to do is I want to give, I want to tell you that, CJ is really the instigator of it. He's done a lot of work already. If you go to 52 Living Ideas and look at the playlist on collaborating for comprehensivity, you will see, more than 24 videos that he has done along this direction. He recommended Buckminster Fuller to me first. The first book I read was the operating manual for Spaceship Earth, which was incredible, and we still have videos of that online. So I invite you to look at those. I asked CJ what he wanted to share with everybody, and here is his take. So I'm going to read the whole thing to you because it provides a very good background of what is possible to be done. Doesn't mean that we can do all of it at once, but this is a vision of what is possible. This is, I think, a comprehensive vision of approaching Bucky. So he calls it the on-ramps to Synergetics, conceptualizing the whole of Bucky's thinking. See, conceptualizing whole of Bucky's thinking. You can see CJ is doing exactly what Bucky would like you to do. If synergetics might be a term best suited to describing the full breadth and depth encompassing Bucky's philosophy, socio-humanistic science, and design system of thinking, then one of my challenges as the executive director of Synergetics Collaborative during its formative years 2002 to 2011 was to imagine how to structure and present Synergetics as Bucky's system of thinking. My current way to try to conceive of this complex system of Bucky's thinking in an integrative way involves dividing Synergetics into four on ramps that appeal to different audiences. The idea is that if any on ramp were pursued to its full scope, then one's thinking would eventually encompass all four. So this is really, really interesting. Okay, so what he's saying is that, this is all, I'm going to get back to this. So all these four things are just one. These are four different approaches, but you can never forget that this is one. So let me fix all these together here. Let's see here. Give me just a second, folks. Let me get this back. All right. So what he's saying, again, coming back here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So what he's saying is that these are all four different ways. If you pursue any of them, you actually get everything. This is very similar to the approach that, let's say, Indian philosophy has in yogas. There is the karma yoga, which is the path of work. There is the bhakti yoga, path of devotion. There is the jnana yoga, path of knowledge. And there is the dhyana yoga, which is focusing on the core principle of the universe. So it is similar to that. So first one is this one, collaboration. So he's now talking about collaborating. Collaborating for comprehensivity. This is a mature project with 26 essays and video explorations. I began developing the idea in 2019. Perhaps it is nearing the time when we can institutionalize this perspective on synergetics, which highlights what Bucky called comprehensivity, where Bucky's thinking on design science, geometry, and integrity are de-emphasized to provide an enticing entry path to synergetics that appeals to broader polymathy and life-learning communities who might care about understanding it all and each other. Okay, so this is what CJ launched with Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society and 52 Living Ideas. And this is why he succeeded in spades. Because, as I said, for us, that's a very core function. We had already known the value of collaboration and the value of comprehensivity. We were already sold on that. So his entire series was a big success for that. So that is all about that. But collaboration is much larger than any particular community that you are part of. So what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to invite people who are deep into Bucky to collaborate, to actually spread the knowledge, love, understanding, and the skills to a much larger group of people. So that is what collaborating is about. Let's go to the second one. I'm going to skip. I'm going to present his 4 ideas in a slightly different order, which match very well with how we at 52 Living Ideas is exploring them. So I'm going to take his number 3. He calls it integrities or omni-integrity. Building this more ethereal approach of to synergetics, which would de-emphasize the comprehensivity, design science and geometry perspectives on synergetics to appeal to holistic thinking, wisdom traditions, including spiritual, new age, hermetics, magic tradition, and religious communities, and those inspired by grand unified theories, theory of everything communities. I have started scoping this idea out in the comprehensivity initiative. Okay, so that is about this. This is about intuition. This is about bringing everything together. The work that we have done on Bhagavad Gita, Gospel of John, and Tao Te Ching is exactly like that. And that is another reason that this particular initiative is very close to what 52 Living Ideas community already is. But again, what it does is that it focuses on the core vision of Bucky. And that is so much more than a particular idea that he might have. So it is never losing that fully never losing the integrity, never losing the oneness, never losing the universality of Bucky's thinking. So that is this part. Now I'm going to go to number 4. He calls it synergetic geometry. There are already many communities of practice surrounding these aspects of this approach, which encompasses geodesic domes, tensegrities, morphology, Fullerian chemistry, as well as Kirby Urner's passion for concentric hierarchy, Tom Miller's comprehensive treatment, Don Biddle's askew but profound approach, Amy Edmondson's book, Fuller Explanation, Synergetic Geometry of R. Buckminster Fuller, John Charter's book, Pure Conceptuality, The Universal Language of Form. And I'm going to continue on what is the Freedom Enchantment in 23 Acts by Ja Wallin, which I have sadly not yet read, and Divided Spheres, the Geodesic and Orderly Subdivision of the Sphere by Ed Popko. And he says, I'm sure there are many other good books and resources. This is an important, vital approach that de-emphasizes comprehensivity, design science, and integrity's perspectives of synergetics to appeal to a more STEM, math, science, engineering communities. I actively work to better understanding this vital part of Bucky's vision, but feel that there are already enough communities of practice that it doesn't require much foundational work to get it off the ground, though it could use a scholar to pull together all the communities of practice into an organized discipline instead of a scattered communities developing its pieces independently. So now most of the people, many of the Bucky scholars and aficionados will fall into this category. So this is the thinking part. This is ideas of Bucky. The synergetic geometry being just one of them. And that is again the challenge that we are taking on. That number one, giving a broader audience to people who are deep into Bucky's ideas. That's number one. Number two, making all of that accessible, doing the work of being the bridge between people who know Bucky's ideas deeply to people who really care about understanding Bucky's ideas, who don't yet know them. So a large part of the Bucky community would start off with this, the deep ideas of Bucky that they have been working with for decades. But this initiative is going to try to make that more part of the culture. That's what our aim is. Finally, so we've now talked about the intuition here. We've talked about the thinking. We've talked about the camaraderie and community. Now the last part, design. Comprehensive, CJ calls it comprehensive anticipatory design science. This perspective of synergetics de-emphasizes the comprehensivity, geometry, and integrity perspectives of synergetics to provide an enticing entry path to synergetics that appeals to the broader design, engineering, and public policy communities. Bucky's ideas of world game would be included here. I have advanced my research into this significant degree, but I'm not yet begun to develop initiatives. Michael Ben Ely is currently the world's leading expert on developing Bucky's design into prototypes for communities of practice, though many others, including Medard Cable and Craig Watson and Elizabeth Thompson, are actively working in this emerging discipline. Uh, CJ has written an essay on design science called The Objective and the Subjective and the Nature of Design Science. CJ concludes this entire presentation. So this is all about this, of saying, how do you apply this? How do you design things using all of these? CJ concludes, while I'm sure there are other ways to divide synergetics into manageable pieces, I think my 4 on-ramp scheme gives a good sense of scope of Bucky's thinking with focused ways that individuals who are not ready for the whole system can examine in depth. One of its aspects adds its own tradition of inquiry and action. Now, this is a very good overview. This is like the conceptual overview. So whatever I have developed is inspired by this. Okay, whatever we are trying to work together, me, Joe, Maritza, and Rupali and CJ, we are trying to actually implement this idea. It is going to be rough and tumble. We don't know exactly how to do this, so we are actually proceeding on all these 4 paths together. We're going to be building community discussions. We will be studying the original insights of Buckminster Fuller. We will be inviting people to present in detail about Bucky's ideas, and we will be examining the designs based on Bucky's ideas. So that is the plan, folks, and I invite you to join us. And Rohit, would you like to add anything or ask anything?
I think these 4 distinct things every month is awesome. I do feel that, maybe just like Bucky felt in school, that maybe we need to do 2 in a month with deep focus on each area. But like you said, it's rough and tumble. It'll be interesting to see how it works out.
Wonderful. I mean, the reason we are doing all 4 is that everybody is different.
Right.
So there are people who will really eat up this part.
Yeah.
Who will really relate to actually just reading Bucky.
Right.
There are going to be people who just who need to actually talk through things, go back and forth. There are going to be people who really appreciate detailed presentations on things. And there are going to be people who are going to, who really need to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
And this entire approach is to make sure that everybody is being carried over. And maybe, ideally, what will happen is that people who really need this begin to get interested in discussion.
That's
the
right.
people who are actually focused just on ideas, they will get a little bit better at doing the communication, or they might see some deep insights that they themselves had not seen. And what I'm hoping is that getting experts together, actually they're going to learn a lot from each other.
That's true.
Because they're going to be actually communing with each other's ideas
Yeah.
on a very larger scale.
Yeah.
And it has already been done, but this is a far more rough and tumble environment.
Yeah.
This is like, I think one of the participants, Jordan, I think last time in the first meetup, he says, this is very messy. He was commenting on Peter's presentation. Like, he had everybody, it was in the middle of a dinner. There were people, family all everywhere. And he was talking passionately about this. And he says, that is living. You see, you're not trying to study things apart from life, but you're studying it in the middle of life. Now, the great thing is that we are also going to, the way it is structured, like critical path, we'll start with critical path. Somebody who finds that very useful will end up reading the whole thing, will start reading other books. Somebody who really gets impressed with an idea, they will deep dive into it. We'll provide contacts for everybody. So there will be conversations that will be going on each of these things. So anybody who wants to kind of take it more in that direction, they would be able to use this framework to build off many things. Does that make sense?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rupali.
So, Buckminster Fuller himself, he thought of himself as a man of action. He didn't think of himself as just the thinking person. He was hired as an idea man, and then his ideas were translated into reality. So I think with the 52 living ideas, I like, you go from the whole to the part. So these 4 weeks, you start with the big picture, you look at what he's written, you look at his ideas, and then actual application. So I like going from the whole to the parts as opposed to starting from picking an application and then going to see who was Buckminster Fuller.
And you were commenting yesterday about our Bhagavad Gita meetups, the way they started. And I have to tell you, it's the same with the Gospel of John meetups, same with the Tao Te Ching meetups. What we do is that we choose a topic, which is a topic well worth diving into. And then we start off as best as we can. And then as we go along, we keep on developing more and more structure to it. Anybody who has anything worth saying will be invited to join in, to contribute, to take it to a new level. If you think anything can be done better, we will do that. So I think that we're going to start off this series at a certain level in January. And then by the time we get to around, like March, June, October, it's going to keep getting better and better because you will have all of these network effects. All right, folks. Any more comments, Rupali? Okay. All right, folks.
I'm looking forward to this.
Great. Me too. Wonderful, folks. So thank you so much. I cordially invite you to join us. If you know Buckminster Fuller, Fuller's ideas, if you have written books, if you have written articles, if you have videos, if you want to talk more, if you have written papers, you have applied the ideas to things, all of you are welcome. And please contact me at 52livingideas@gmail.com, or you can contact me through Meetup. And we are really looking forward to it. This series is going to be fantastic. So thank you very much, everybody. Bye.